This is Alexandria, Egypt, fabled city in antiquity for a few different reasons. But we're here to look at a sword that was from there. Alexandria is a seaside city, as you can tell, and that probably plays a role in this sword's history. We're looking at the middle one here. I saw this at the Met in New York City. The Arms and Armor section of that massive museum is massive in and of itself, and just a great place to spend some time. There's a million great things to see in there, but this one definitely caught my fancy. Very wide cut and thrust blade, as you can see. We don't know when the sword was made, but it was cataloged in the early 15th century, 1419. The museum provides these amazing public domain pictures for everyone. Thank you. You can see Alexandria at the bottom left near Cairo, and this location is important, what I'm showing you here, including Cyprus, because it might touch on this particular sword's history. Alexandria is right on the Mediterranean, port city, so it had a lot of trade. And one theory is that this sword was sent from Cyprus to the Sultan in Alexandria as tribute. Here's the lighthouse of Alexandria, by the way. The city was famous for that, and its library, and of course for this man here, Alexander the Great. It's named after him, but long after him and long after the Ptolemaic kingdoms that ruled Egypt after his death, came the Mamluks, who were in charge when this sword was imported. Or won in battle, right? And, or sacking a city, and brought back to Alexandria as booty. Because the Mamluks did a lot of fighting. So they're a very interesting story that we'll just barely touch on here, but as you saw on this book's cover, essentially slave soldiers who established a dynasty, one that lasted from the mid-13th to the early 16th century. The name Mamluk literally means purchased slave. These were ethnically diverse non-Arab slaves brought in from the Near East. They were from Turkey and surrounding areas, Europe, and they became a force to be reckoned with, obviously. Here you're looking at the classic Mamluk curved saber or scimitar, which then became popular in the West, famously when Napoleon and his forces moved in, but that was way later. So back to this time period here, the Mamluks were in charge and had this in their armory in Alexandria. And it's a beautiful piece of work, obviously a medieval cut-and-thrust sword with a classic cruciform hilt and a very typical pommel for a European medieval sword of the time. I'll give you a little up-close look there. I would call this a hand-and-a-half sword myself, but I don't know if classification-wise that would be precisely correct. The three most notable things about the sword are definitely how wide the guard is, how wide the base of the blade is, and the inscription that we'll see on the base. And here is that inscription, and it is why we know that this is from the arsenal at Alexandria. The length of the blade is a little over 34 inches. The entire sword is almost 44 inches. And you can see here with this extreme close-up I took that the cross-section of the blade would be that flattened diamond, right? So it'd be a very sturdy blade, and as you can tell, and you will when we see the point, also a very sharp one. But yeah, a very strong blade for sure. I mean, that width, that thickness, especially in the center, not overly ornate, but this definitely, was a nice blade. This was not just a cheap workingman's sword. Notice that the center of the cross hilt there even mimics the diamond cross-section shape. Nice little touch by the maker, so again, a notable design overall, and you could see why it was brought back. So here's that point. Just wicked. Love how it terminates there, right? You've almost got a uniform triangle, but then of course it tapers down to the thrusting point. Most cut-and-thrust blades of a similar time and place, meaning where this was captured or sent from, not actual Alexandria or Egypt, most cut-and-thrust blades would not have so wide of a triangle for sure. And, here's a painting by Goya, one of the greatest painters to ever live, of Mamluk warriors fighting, so we have to include that. Obviously from far later in history than our medieval sword. We have a couple of proof marks or something like that on the blade, so I'll show you both of them, even though both pictures are a little bit blurry. Sorry about that. And now I'll go back to the point and show you a serious close-up of that. Love the details on these things, and this is what you don't get on other channels, is it? It's not just my face and I happen to be holding an old sword, and I want you guys to see all the minute details and be as close to examining it in person as I can make this for you. Speaking of that, here's a quick video. And I will leave you with a close-up of the pommel as we pan out, so you can see that part in detail as well. Well, that's it. Thanks a lot.